We have a lot to cover, and we've been out of town, and so we've been kind of in a scramble. This is just so like the enemy of all that is righteous, to kind of keep us in the swirly right up to the end. But we'll be all right. We're on the winning side.
Yep.
Are you good?
Yep, we're good. Let's go, I think. Sheila, are we good? All right.
All right. So we're beginning Revelation 13 tonight. Revelation 13 is very much tied to chapter 12, so we'll pick up a verse there as we launch in. But we're not going to try to get all the way through 13. We're going to get through the first portion of it, and then we'll pick up the rest of it and take the beginning of 14 in our next time together. We brought handouts for those of you who are here. We brought the past handouts, so several of those are available too. And so there's just some opportunities that for what's going on tonight. Are you still having fun?
Yeah, you're on mute, so I'm trying to figure out. You're good now. I got you fixed.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Anyway,
I was green there.
I'm telling you, we're just. I thought this would be fine coming back from meetings, but apparently it's not. But anyway.
All right.
Good.
Do you want to explain since I've been on mute because this is all just for
That's
the.
right. Yeah, so people on
online
live stream
audience.
can't hear what's going on. You were doing great. I need a minute.
Well, let's pray and you take it.
That's right. There we go.
Lord, thank you for your blessings to us tonight, that we sit here together. We have your word lying out before us for an opportunity to talk through it and understand it. Pray that your Holy Spirit would guide our conversation. You'll bless those who are present, those who are watching online, and that in all of the process tonight, you might be the one leading and your will might be done. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
So, for those of you who are watching my lips move online and not hearing anything, sorry. We're a little bit behind. We have been traveling, and so Tim and I just rolled in here this afternoon, and trying to get everything together has left us a little behind. We were needing some tech support. There's just a lot going on. So we're going to be, 8 minutes behind. We're going to lengthen question period tonight, and so that'll help a little bit with some of those of you who are present. But we're going to cover chapter 13 through about the middle of it, and we'll pick up the rest of it with the beginning of 14 on our next session.
That's right. Which we'll talk about at the end.
Which we will cover more in the end. Okay?
I'm ready.
You ready to go?
Yep.
All right.
All right. So, as with everything that we've been doing with Revelation, we want to always remember to connect it back to that from whence it came. And just reminding us, going back to, as we start 13, we want to pick up the last verse of 12 because it introduces an important character and kind of makes the story push forward. So
it actually introduces maybe the prime character in 13.
Yes.
Connecting the two together. I wouldn't have put a chapter break there, but I wasn't in charge of chapter breaks.
Yep. All right. So chapter 12, verse 17, and the dragon was enraged with the woman, and he went to make war with the rest of her offspring, who keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus.
So it ends right there. We'll come back to something similar to that in chapter 13, but as we go, we have the dragon. He was introduced to us. We get a clear picture of who we're dealing with. He's the old serpent called the devil and Satan. If we have any questions about it, we haven't been paying attention. So it's clearly dealing with this dragon is Satan himself. And so we come into 13, and we start to be introduced to a new element of the vision. We've seen in 12, the woman standing on the moon with the garland of stars on her head. She's about to give birth to the child. We talked about the fact that the church, in this case Judaism, gives birth to Jesus. And then there's a whole bunch of stuff that flowed out of that we talked about last time. But it carries right into what we're doing here today, and several things will overlap.
All right. So verse 1. Then I stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns, and on his heads a blasphemous name.
So, get the picture. We have this new introduction of a beast coming out of the water. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But note that there are heads and there are horns. We're going to look at those carefully, but notice where the crowns are. When we saw this beast before, the crowns were on the head. Now they're on the horns. It's a simple thing, but it's an important one. We'll talk about why in a minute. But we're going to cover something else here first.
All right, so
The sea.
the sea, and I saw a beast rising out of the sea. And that's from chapter.
That's from here. and then
That's from
chapter
here,
17.
yes. Trying to figure out this slide on the fly.
Sorry, the
kind of thing.
chapter 17 is where we're going next.
So something that we've been talking about now is as we've switched over into chapters 11 and 12, if you remember when I was talking about chapter 11, there a switch is thrown in chapter 11 and the book of Daniel becomes just explodes on, I think he used like a volcano sort of analogy. And so we're going to be tracking some of that, but also tracking some of the themes, because as we get into this last section, some of the descriptions, it's helpful to look ahead and get some descriptions. So that's what we're doing as we talk about the sea. We're going ahead to chapter 17 of Revelation to pull out a little tidbit. So this is from chapter 17, verse 3. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast, which was full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Then he said to me, the
Skip down to
waters...
verse 15.
Verse 15. Then he said to me, the waters which you saw where the harlot sits are peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues.
So we wanted you to take a look at this because he's coming out of the sea, and this becomes a running theme. There's a lot of things coming out of the sea. We see them in Daniel in the same manner, and it's explained in Revelation. What is this water? What is this sea? What is this about? Well, this is a populated area. This is a place where there's a lot of people. There will be some signs where an image will come out of a barren place, out of the dry land. And it's saying, okay, this is a place that's not very populated, and this is a place that's populated. And so that's just a simple understanding, but it comes into some of these things as we try to explain why we're thinking this is this. Okay, because it comes from this place or it comes from that place.
Okay, so now jumping back to verse 2 in chapter 13, this beast that came out, which had 7 heads and 10 horns. Now the beast which I saw was like a leopard. His feet were like the feet of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion.
Ta-da!
Wow.
So that picture that you're looking at is an artist's conception. We didn't actually get a picture from the Bible. This is an artist's conception of what he saw. But it's a very significant set of descriptions because these descriptions are not new to us.
That's correct.
If we had just been reading Daniel, we would know these descriptions. If you're a well-versed Jewish person, if you're aware of your Bible, and if you know the stories, particularly Daniel would be important because Daniel is a significant prophet. He was during the exile. They're post-exilic now. They're now back in the Promised Land, and Daniel's one of the last prophets of the era. You have Ezekiel, Jeremiah, and Daniel, and then you have a lot of silence. And so those prophets would have been significant. Daniel also prophesies the coming of the Messiah. So there's a lot about Daniel that would catch their eyes. And this in the text we had in chapter 10, you're going to take this little book, you're going to eat it, it's going to be sweet in your mouth and bitter in your stomach. And so this is all kind of roaming around Daniel, and Daniel has this dream in chapter 7.
All right, so now notice we have gone on an excursus. Squirrel, that's a fancy scholarly name for
like
squirrel,
that.
rabbit trail.
I've never really used the
But
word
yes.
excursus. I'll have to try that.
We have gone on an excursus to Daniel chapter 7. And so here we have, and 4 great beasts came up from the sea. I promise we're reading from Daniel, not Revelation. It sounds similar. Each different from the other. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. Okay, skipping down a few verses. And after this I saw in night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, exceedingly strong. It was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. So we're kind of picking up a dreadful beast that has the 10 horns is kind of the thread.
And so, unfortunately, that's on me. We skipped a couple of these beasts. But here's that we'll hopefully get some more of the image and information.
Well, here comes some of the other ones. And suddenly another beast, a second, like a bear. And then after this I looked, and there was another, like a leopard, which had 4 wings of a bird. The beast also had 4 heads. Now the beast which I saw was like a leopard, and his feet were like the feet of the bear. So
we're actually back to
we're
Dan-
back
Revelation,
in
not
Revelation
Daniel.
here. Yeah. And his mouth like the mouth of a lion. So that's, I think, just kind of stopping there. We're just kind of trying to point out, you can see that the leopard, the bear, the lion, all came out in Daniel as separate entities. And then there was the beast that was undescribable but had 10 horns on his head. And so what we're trying to say is that this beast that comes out of Revelation is an amalgamation of those 4 beasts kind of put into one.
So again, pardon our scrambled heads right at the moment, but if you see these two together, they start to make sense. In Daniel, you have these images come out one by one. In Revelation, there's some sort of a conglomerate. So here's the Daniel picture. So you have a bear, you have a lion with the wings, you have the leopard with the wings, you have that dragon-like beast in the back with all the horns on its head. Okay, and so Daniel sees something like this. The last beast is nondescript. He doesn't have words to describe it. It's something beyond his description as far as I can understand it. I like rhinoceros, personally. But
All right.
that's the picture we have here, and it's significant because can anyone count the heads in those pictures?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
7 heads. How many horns are on his head? 10
10.
horns. So we have 7 heads and 10 horns. Well, this beast that we just saw in Revelation happens to have 7 heads, 10 horns, and the images are all conglomerated into one thing. You catch it?
Yep. I'm just noticing that the wings are gone now. I don't know if that means anything. I'm just noticing it.
And this may not be as fast in this present form.
Well, yeah, I had that thought.
So, but you get the picture. The artist is trying to show you the leopard and his 4 heads, the lion, this bear, if you look at the bear, he's kind of riding on the back, and then this dragon all conglomerated into one. Revelation is clearly saying, hey, you remember Daniel? Here's the beasts that you saw in Daniel. You saw these things and then we progressed through them. In Daniel, they are Babylon, the lion, Medo-Persia, the bear, Greece, the leopard, and Rome, this nondescript beast. We know this because we're told in chapter 2 that Nebuchadnezzar is this leader of this great nation. Well, the lion is this description of the state of Babylon. There are lions all around in Babylon, marking it out as this lion. This lion creature, then later when we get on into the thing, he tells him, you're the first in this succession. Then along comes this next in the succession, this bear. The bear. We know that Medo-Persia is described as the bear. Greece gets called out by name later in the book. And so we have this succession of empires that go from Babylon to Medo-Persia, historically, Greece, and then Rome. One after another. And they grow larger until Rome sweeps from England to North Africa to India. Greece is from Greece to India. Medo-Persia is Egypt all the way around to Persia, going up into what we would consider Turkey in that region. Babylon is primarily promised land over into the Tigris-Euphrates. They have some control over Egypt, but they don't have domination over Egypt. So it grows as it succeeds one after another, and they're represented as separate, and now they're represented as a conglomeration. Okay? Chapter 2 is a statue. Chapter 7 has the images. And here in
This
chapter
is of
13
Daniel. We're just be clear. We're chapter 2 of Daniel, chapter
you.
7 and 8 of Daniel, and 9. That's what. Just keep track.
So what we're trying to help you understand is just one fact. That the picture you're seeing in the book of Revelation is a conglomeration of the images from Daniel chapter 7.
But I think where that becomes kind of important point to sort of ingest sort of a thing is just the continuity that of what God has been showing, because Daniel would have been, oh, help me out, 1,000 years, 700?
At this point, 700 years.
700 years or so, before John's writing Revelation and doing this. And so just this same picture that's being shown, John is probably seeing these things in vision, but also recalling, knowing his Bible, recalling Daniel, saying this is the same thing. And so, but just that continuity of communication, I think, is important, because that gives like some confidence that we can have in what is being said, and we can make these connections.
And we're going to get a new bit of information as this now gets explained.
Yeah.
So as the text goes on, it's going to give us a little more information.
Okay, perfect. So we're still in verse 2, which just reviewing, speeding along in verse 2. Now the beast which I saw was like a leopard, his feet were like the feet of the bear, his mouth like the mouth of a lion. Okay, that part we've done. This part's the new part of verse 2. The dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority.
And the reason I think this is such a significant bit is that we've never been told that Satan has been behind these empires before. Now, they all look like the devil. They're all behaving like the devil, but we don't get to see it and explicitly are not told of it until now. Revelation finally says, behind all of this political malaise that's been going on, the dragon is really responsible. He has been giving him his power, his seat, and his great authority. And so now the dragon in chapter 12, which we know is Satan, is revealed. And now his political activities are being revealed. And we shouldn't be surprised that the devil finds his way into politics. At least if you've been following politics.
All right. So on to verse 3. And I saw one of his heads as if it had been mortally wounded, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world marveled and followed the beast.
Now, I don't want to tackle this one until we get to the 3.5 times.
Okay.
You ready? Or do you want to throw it?
No.
Throw down on this right now.
I was ready, but no, as long as I can follow that.
As long as you get a chance. Okay.
All right. So they worshiped the dragon who gave authority to the beast. I'm going to read that again. So they worshiped the dragon who gave authority to the beast. And they worshiped the beast, saying, who is like the beast? Who is able to make war with him?
Go.
Can I be unleashed yet? Can we go?
Go,
All right,
go.
no.
This is important to cover.
All right, so am I going to cover this, or we're coming back to the other slide, right?
The other side will come too.
Okay, all right. So, all right, so this for me was like one of the things that jumped out in this round of looking at Revelation. The question, so they're worshiping the beast. I mean, they're worshiping the dragon who gives authority to the beast. And they worship this beast by saying, who is like the beast? Who is able to make war with him? Does that sound anything similar to stuff that we've just read in the last chapter? Okay, I just think back to, if you have a Bible, I don't know that we have a slide for this, but just think back to Revelation chapter 12, verse 7. Listen as I read. And war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought with the dragon. Okay? If you remember our discussion on Michael,
Which is a couple weeks back. So.
Which is a couple weeks ago. If you remember this discussion, Michael, and you can make a strong case that I think is ironclad, that Michael is just another name for Jesus. Okay? Michael is Jesus. And we can see that, and we've studied that and referenced that before, okay? But if you remember what Michael means, Jesus Christ being referred to as Michael the archangel, Michael means who is like God. The beast the dragon is being worshipped And it's being worshiped with the saying, "Who is like the beast?" Now, it's stated
bold.
as a
It's very bold.
it's stated as a question, but just think about this. Chapter 12, verse 7, we're being told about Michael, who is like God.
His name means "who is like God."
That's what it means. And then we're told that he makes war with the dragon. And the worshipers in this, who are worshiping this dragon, are saying, "Who is like the beast?" I think the implied answer is, in their minds, no one. No one's like the beast. Who
Because
can
it
make
says,
war?
Who's able to make war with him?
And just forgetting.
That chapter 12 just. So.
Go ahead.
I
I'm
don't know if you
speechless.
guys made up. We're just sitting here stumbling because our minds are blown. In the previous chapter, the dragon goes to war with Michael, whose name means "who is like God." And now the dragon is being worshipped after this deadly wound is healed, which we haven't touched on yet. And therefore, because they're worshiping this beast, because of the wound that's being healed, they're actually worshiping the dragon, and they're saying, "Who is like the beast? Who is able to make war with him?" Oh, I know.
right.
One who is like God.
Okay. So, but I think so that's kind of the nerdy cool part, I think, of all of this.
This is your nerdy Greek lesson for the day.
But it's just amazing because what this is really speaking to is that this beast with the authority of the dragon is convincing people to worship in a way that is so similar to how we're asked to worship, but it is the complete opposite.
It's a counterfeit going in the other direction.
I'll make this statement and back it up a little bit later. This is a counterfeit gospel, is what this really is. And we need to see that, because with this phrase, "who is like the beast," has to, in your mind, conjure up the whole Michael thing with "who is like God."
Well, and there's also one more piece to this. This image, the reason the worship starts is because he was struck, and it seemed like his wound was deadly. He was going to be killed. But he's healed. He comes back from a deadly wound.
Now,
You have the imitation resurrection here. You have all this
Yeah, okay.
stuff coming back.
the word that's used there, so we've slipped back into that previous verse, and that's okay? I can go now?
You can.
Okay, so we slipped back in that verse, this mortal wound and whatever, the words that are used there really conjure up that picture that is a absolute death blow, kind of a slain, that they're slain, that
Like
they're,
your head got chopped off.
yes, killed sort of a thing. It is something that is very similar to, in the context of everything going on, we have to think like, okay, this is almost looking like the death of Jesus.
Well, and remember the way Jesus is introduced in this book. A lamb that has been, as if it has been slain. He's alive, but he looks like all the images are being drawn together now as we have these sort of climbing the ladder of information. And we're reaching a place where the pieces are starting to be drawn in so that you can see more clearly what's going on in front of you and behind the scenes. And can you get now why we're kind of jazzed about this and a little just stumbling over ourselves in our own excitement? There's so much that impacts you in these verses. You can just read through like, la, 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 on we go. And here it is, just layer upon layer upon layer of this beast and the counterfeit worship that he's building. So there we're back to verse 4. And can we carry on to 5 then?
Yes.
All right, there we go.
All right, perfect. And he was given a mouth speaking great things. So this is the beast is given a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies. And he, the beast, was given authority from the dragon to continue for 42 months. Can I go? Can I go?
You can go.
Okay, all right, very good. So again, if you recall back 4 weeks ago or so, when we were talking about chapters 10 and 11, I believe it is, or 11 and 12, you have these time periods that come up that we've spent the last couple times talking about, these 42 months and 1,260 days.
And 3.5 times.
And 3.5 times. 3.5 times comes from, is found in Daniel as well as 42 months and 1,260. This is kind of where that Daniel connection begins to get in there. But remembering that 42 months, we were talking about whenever the time period is given in 42 months, it's always referring to the entities that are against God.
Right. One's opposing God get 42 months.
And I think that sometimes when people read Revelations, you can start to think, well, the 42 months must be different than the 1260 because they keep getting mentioned, and so there must be two separate time periods.
Why are they calling them? Why are they naming them differently?
Yeah,
They're the same thing.
Because one side is getting, is just getting designated that way. I think we do this a lot, and I don't have a great example right now, but I can think where, we have a designation that can mean this, essentially mean the same thing, but in this instance, we're going to call it this. Something that just popped. My wife was asking me, I think just this week, did you grow up calling it dinner or supper?
Or
So
soda or pop.
yeah. So, and then when I grew up in the Midwest, I called it soda. I called it pop. Now it's taken me a long time. I now call it all soda. But that's something where we have different names that refer to the same thing, but we know that they're different and they kind of indicate some
So
things.
did you call it dinner or supper?
Supper. Dinner didn't.
Was dinner lunch?
No, lunch was lunch.
See, it was dinner and supper. You
Okay.
had breakfast, dinner, and supper.
All right. That's my fault. 45 seconds. That's something we don't need to talk
Lost
about.
forever.
Okay. But the idea that these 42 months and 1,260 days are always referred to differently, but to a group of people gets a designation of months and then one gets a designation of days. It's the same time period. And so I think that's important to have. Now, Walt.
The thing that dawned on me as we were discussing this time is that the Romans have changed the calendar recently. The Romans have removed the Jewish names from the calendar, and they've given the calendar Roman names. They're gods. They're Caesars. August is Augustus Caesar. And you have this granular experience in the day-to-day life of the average Jewish person, and therefore the average new Christian people. They're having to call the months by the names of these pagans who've decided randomly, after centuries of this, to change the names to what they want. And so it dawned on me, they had changed all the names of the months.
So this is hot off the press. I've never read anything about this, about this connection. So take it with a slight grain of salt. But
maybe this is something we first discovered, but I doubt it.
I got to go find it. Maybe that's a question for ChatGPT later. That'll be fun. But I think what's important to notice here is that this is, again, another, if that connection is true, if it is, which it seems very plausible, it's one of those other little tidbits that gives this idea that even though we're going to be talking about how these beasts represent things that are current, there was application of this sort of concept. An original reader would have picked up on the days and months thing if this scenario is true, and would have just been like, this is that group, this group that's changing the calendar and taking away these God-centered names or what they've been forever, and now putting in their pagan thing. Each month has this new name. And so it's this interesting thing to sort of just think about and remind ourselves about how this would have hit just as strong and just as geeky to an original reader.
Well, and you have to remember, a lot of the symbology is going to pass by a Roman, but hit a Jew. And this is very significant in this letter getting passed back. The Romans have to read what he's asking them to send to the churches, and they're going to check on it. And a lot of this stuff would just go right by them. I'm not even sure they would have noticed. I've read this for the last 40 years and haven't noticed it. And so here's Tim pointing it out to me. It's like, oh, duh. They just changed the names of the months. So you're going to find that it's true, Tim.
I don't doubt it. It's just amazing.
So we have this next image for you because it wraps this part up, this 1260-day period. Tim told you before, we're talking about 1798 or 538 to 1798, and it's significant. 538 starts with the Emperor Justinian making declarations about the authority of the Bishop of Rome. Up to this point, he's just the Bishop of Rome. But what has happened in Italy at this point in the intervening time, since the time, so John is writing this around the turn of the first century. We're now, by the time you get to 538, you're 5 centuries later. So what's the big deal? Well, up to this point, it's just been the 5 bishops. Now the Bishop of Rome is about to become Papa. He's about to become the leader, the Pope, the Bishop of the bishops, the head of the church. Well, a group of Arian, and this is not the Arian Brotherhood kind of Arian, these are Arians who don't believe Jesus is God, has risen to authority and captured Italy. Remember when we were talking about the churches, we talked about the fact that the Arians were starting to grow and the churches are describing this Arian infusion into Christianity. Well, they're actually in control of Italy and they're in control of Rome. Well, remember the seat of authority of the empire has moved off to Constantinople under Constantine, and so Rome has been left to its own devices, and various people have sacked Rome, and right now a group of Goths, and don't think people in black clothes, this is an actual tribe, is now in the town. The Ostrogoths are in Rome and they're controlling it. Well, the emperor sends one of his generals, a guy named Belisarius, and I'll try to keep this history as quick as possible, into Rome. He's recaptured Rome. He's deposed this Ostrogoth leader, and they've reinstalled the papal authority over the community. And the Roman emperor has said of the Bishop of Rome, you now have all authority over the churches, and any issue with the church will come to you. So this is now the emperor separating himself entirely from the church's entanglements and given this bishop the responsibility for handling all church leadership and church questions. So they defeat the Arians in war, kill them off, and that's the end of the Arian. The falsehood the Arians are bringing about Jesus. They're saying Jesus is not God, okay? And so that is being defeated, and at the same time, the emperor is handing over leadership of Rome to the Bishop of Rome. And that's where we get this 538 date, okay? That standard it will take a while for that to become a political strength, which it later does. But at this moment, it's just all church stuff goes to you, all business stuff goes to me, and it's a division of power. But it starts to rise into a political power over the next several hundred years. 1798, this is my last part of this historical interlude. 1798 is when actually during the French Revolution, Napoleon gets power. Napoleon ends up in Rome, deposes the Pope, puts his own Pope on the seat, takes this Pope, puts him in jail, and the cardinals elect another Pope. So there's actually 3 at the time. The one in jail dies, and this whole mess called the deadly wound actually arrives on the scene. Historically, that's been called the deadly wound. Enough?
All right. Yes. To recap, the deadly wound is when the Pope was captured. Awesome. And then put out and then died. And 3 popes came out. Okay, perfect.
2 more coming.
All right.
The
Awesome.
one the French want and the one the Cardinals want.
We're not even going to make it through 9 verses. Let's go.
It keeps going.
All right. So then he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name, his tabernacle, and those who dwell in heaven.
This beast is, again, the Arians are saying that Jesus isn't God. It's the ultimate blasphemy of Jesus. He's not God. And so you have this whole thing swirling around into discussion with the churches and now here.
All right, verse 7, it was granted to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And authority was given him, the beast, over every tribe, tongue, and nation. Now I want to stop here.
Yeah, this
Uh,
is now global power that's being
yeah.
described.
So it's a global power, and remember, we went ahead and we're looking at the sea and saw the sea referencing that it was multitudes, people, nations, kind of a deal. So here we have authority given to him over every tribe, nation, and tongue. Now I want to point out a similarity because
Okay.
this goes back to that comment I made earlier about
The parallels here.
the parallels about the who is like the beast thing and saying that this is a false gospel. If we jump ahead in Revelation and do those hyperlink things again, Revelation chapter 14, verse 6,
Which we'll get to next time.
which we will get to next time, talks about an angel flying in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel. So I was saying that this is a counterfeit
False
gospel.
gospel, yeah.
So here we have the everlasting gospel to preach to those who dwell on the earth, to every nation, tribe, and tongue, and people. Okay? So this little hyperlink to give him authority over every tribe, tongue, and nation really drives home the fact that the beast is presenting something where it is starting to say, wait a minute, I am God. To blaspheme God, take away the deity of Jesus, as the Arians did, but also to say, well, I'm going to go ahead and take his spot. I'll say that I'm God. That's blasphemy. And that's why what Jesus was doing, where they were like, crucify him, he's blaspheming. He's saying he's God. That's blasphemy. And so that's what this beast begins to do and comes out with the worship cry of who is like the beast, who can make war with me, and I'm given authority over every tribe and tongue and nation. This is a counterfeit gospel. This is not just political. There are spiritual things happening here, and this is a counterfeit gospel that's going out.
This is the issue of worship. The issue is worship is what we're going to cover in chapters 13 and 14. But understand, the Pharaoh was a god, right? The Babylonian king was a god. The Greek kings were gods. The Roman kings were gods. They were claiming divinity. They were requiring worship. In John's time, in the time of the first century, there was severe penalties for people who refused to worship the emperor. And so this rising, remember the dragon is giving all of these conglomerate beast-looking beings, his power, his great authority. It's always been about worship. It's coming to a head and described in this passage, and it's going to carry into the end of time. But it's always been about worship. The dragon wants to be like God. He stands before Adam and Eve and says, God's lying. God's lying. When Jesus goes to face him in the desert, he says, bow down to me. It's always been about who you're going to worship. If God is God, worship him. If Baal is God, worship him. It's always been about worship. And so these kings claiming that they deserve to be worshipped fits into the mold, and all of these kings in their empires have a level of worship. They are demigods or actual gods. So the whole pattern fits right in here. And if we don't catch the subtle telltale elements of it, that it is trying to imitate Jesus, we miss the point. We miss the point of the whole chapter.
Yep.
Okay, we're gonna get there.
All
We're
right.
eight.
All who, 12, verse 8, all who dwell on the earth will worship him. Now I want to kind of point out real quick
This conglomerate.
the conglomerate, but all who dwell on the earth. Remember, we've just 2 verses previous, I think it was, had the beast going to make war in the sanctuary or tabernacle and against those who dwell in heaven. That reference to dwelling in heaven isn't necessarily a reference to angels. This is, again, a separation, I think, of people who are on God's side. And in this scenario, all who dwell on the earth are those who have chosen to be on the side of the beast. And I think the important for me of making that clarification is just to say, like, because I could read this and be like, well, right now I'm dwelling on the earth, and I don't like the fact that all who dwell in the earth will worship him whose names have not been written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world.
This is the first time we get a picture in Revelation writing the book as well. This book is going to be very important in the decisions that are made going forward about dealing with sin. This book of the Lamb's book of life. Having your name in the Lamb's book of life means you're covered by the blood of the Lamb. And so this is the introduction to this concept into the text. So we carry on to 9 and 10. I split up 10 a little bit. So.
All right. If anyone has an ear, let him hear. He who leads into captivity shall go into captivity. He who kills with the sword must be killed with the sword.
Okay, so this picture, you've now got this worship, the division of worship, those who are worshiping the Lamb, those who are worshiping this conglomerate beast, therefore worshiping the dragon. So anyone who has ever declared the emperor a god, from the Pharaoh to Caesar, anyone who has ever declared them a god, that's the people who are worshiping actually the one who behind the beast, who is the dragon. So you get kind of what's going on there. The declaration in Revelation here is you're either worshiping Satan or you're worshiping God. There's no middle ground. There's no sitting on this fence. The devil owns the fence. So this picture is drawing a pretty stark line. The passage is saying worship is the issue, and there's only two sources. There's only two places to worship. No matter what other things are swirling around and claiming that they are gods, they're not really different because their power, their seat, and their great authority come from the dragon himself. So Revelation 13 is a hot, hot seat. So the last bit
Of the first half.
of the first half, chapter 10, and then I've dropped 12, 11 in here as well.
All right. So here is the perseverance and faith of the saints. So remember, that comes right after he who captives must be captive, kills with sword must be killed by the sword. Here is the perseverance and faith of the saints. Following that thread, we've jumped back to chapter 12, and they overcame him, this would be the dragon, by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, and they did not love their lives to the death.
So the reason I wanted to drop 12 in here is because, remember, there are no divisions. They would have heard this entire letter read as one letter. So they would have had chapter 12, which closes with these commentaries, and go right into chapter 13, where this new beast is introduced. The dragon is introduced as the support of all of these empires that were declared by Daniel, and the current empire that they're living with. And as they're working through all of those things, they have been told, here's the perseverance of the saints in the midst of this struggle. And they've been told in chapter 12, how do they defeat the devil who's behind all of this? They overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and the power of their testimonies. They didn't love their lives to death, because choosing not to worship the beast and his images would cause you and cause many of you to lose your lives. It was the fact of the time. And it was the fact going backward all the way to the previous pharaohs and empires, and it was the fact going forward even into what happens in the Dark Ages. If you go against the political leadership of the church, you face death, and many, many did. So that's where we're closing tonight.
That's correct.
Because we introduce a new image, and a whole bunch more things have to be talked about to get to that image. So we just knew we would not have time to get it all done, and I think according to the clock over there, we're right.
Yep. So we will take questions now before we close out. Oh, all right. Questions. Anybody have a question and or?
We're not looking for answers, just questions.
That's right.
Well, we must have done really well.
All right.
Either that or
Jeff has an itch on his head, and his hand keeps going up to scratch it. So I think inside he's got one. I'm coming over.
So if you're online with us right now, you're welcome to hang and listen to the questions. Tim's going to try to make sure the questions are audible for you.
And I think this may be, tell me, because I did this before, if this is something that's coming up that we're going to deal with. But, we kind of touched on it before, the beast coming up out of the sea versus coming up out of the earth. And here when it says, all that are on the earth shall worship him, is that implying, because a lot of times the earth is the United States in some interpretations, and I'm just wondering if that, if there's any significance there to that.
I think it's more global in this case. We haven't yet had that division off in the rest of this chapter. It's more global. There's a distinction, those who are written in the Lamb's Book of Life and those who are not. It's kind of telling us either you're worshiping God or you're not. And there's only one option here. So I think that's we figured there might be a bunch of questions since you laid out a whole cadre of bits and pieces of information for you this evening.
You're saying the whole...
Oh, he let Tim get to you.
The whole earth then will worship, all those that are not written in the Lamb's Book of Life will worship the beast or his image.
That's the declaration. And then I say this a lot when I talk to people. You can't sit on the fence where your relationship with God is concerned because the devil owns the fence. It's a decision to be made to follow God. It's a decision to be made to be covered by the blood of the Lamb. And if you refuse to make a decision, you're stuck. You're uncovered. You don't have the blood of the Lamb covering you. And so that's why Jesus will say, I didn't come to condemn the world condemns itself. Because light has come into the world and they've chose darkness instead of light. And it's by not choosing, you make a choice. The devil owns the fence. There's another question over here. You just got comfortable.
I did.
You want to stay here and I'll take my little thing over there and try?
I got this.
All right.
You stay there.
Okay. I'll stay here.
Answer the question position.
Okay. We really thought we're going to need lots of extra time for questions tonight.
Sorry, I glanced down at my Bible and this jumped out at me. You talked about the fatal wound. You didn't talk about his fatal wound that was healed, the healed part of it. Or
Yep, we
did I
haven't
miss it?
talked about that.
That's a great observation.
Would you like to expand on that?
Yes.
We're kind of in the territory of what we're going to cover next time, and we're probably going to have to do a pretty stout review because of the break. But we have this 1798 event where literally the whole system is disrupted. A political entity, an emperor from France, comes down, removes the Pope because he doesn't like the way he's dealing with things. And there's some things going on between France and the papacy at the time. Remember, France has killed off a bunch of religious leaders. Their revolution killed off their king in their revolution. All these things are complete anathema to the settled process that has been going on for 1,000, 1,200 years now. And so this is causing conflict. And what sets them off is that one of their representatives to the Vatican gets murdered. A French representative to the Vatican gets murdered in Italy. And so they're mad, they come down, they want reparations, they're demanding a bunch of things, and this Pope is just saying no. And so Napoleon just goes in, captures him, and hauls him away, and puts someone who's more cooperative on the throne. And what it does is it says, this is no longer an entity in which the people, after which the people of Europe have to bow. You don't have to do what he says, because I'm about to depose him. He has no authority over us. And it looks like the end of the papacy. It really does, because it's destroyed the authority. But the restoration of that authority will come. We'll talk about that more later, but that's the deadly wound part of it. And that restoration takes 150 years. to be fully settled?
All right, next question.
Hi, thank you. On verse 10, chapter 13, verse 10, when it says, "Here is the patience and the faith of the saints," I'm just curious, what is the "here" referring to? Is that referring to what's said prior in verse 10? That he that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity, he that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword, as if like that is like, kind of like the vengeance or whatnot that happens? Is that I'm just curious, what does that mean? Like, here is the patience and the faith.
The concept is you're under persecution at this point, but the persecutors themselves will be judged. The judgment will come upon the persecutors for what has happened here. And basically says, here's what you're going to have to remember to persevere. Your family, your friend, somebody you love and you know, maybe yourself, will face the blade, will face the crucifixion. You know, Paul has his head chopped off. Peter's hung on a cross. Hundreds of thousands, millions of people will die for their faith. From not just in the first century, this carries on for centuries and centuries. And at the end of the day, sorry, I don't even know if that thing's going through to anyone else but you all. But at the end of the day, what's really happening with this is that this final word of assurance is, look, God is still in control. When it looks like the devil is winning because of all this violence that's coming on your head, God is still in control. They will lose in the end. And if you think about it in terms of what we're going to get to in Revelation, as you've read through Revelation, you see that there will be a final end of sin. This is really the introductory elements for that final end of sin. We're going to launch into, in the next chapter, some real severe judgment scenes in 14. So you have these calls for decision in 14, and then they're followed by, if you choose still to worship the beast in his image, this is what's coming. And you're almost going to be sitting at the feet of Hosea or Jeremiah, and they're saying, if you refuse to follow God and turn back to God and choose God, these terrible horrors are waiting for you. And that's the summary in this little short verse. Those who cause death will receive death as their reward.
And I would look back to just kind of what was happening in chapter 12.
The battle between Michael and the
Well, yeah, when
dragon.
that we went back and referenced that, was that?
Oh, yeah, the end of 12, yeah. It's verse 11. And
Yeah.
they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb, by the word of their testimony.
If you track that and kind of look at out of the persecution in chapter 12 with the dragon attacking the church, Satan attacking the woman, representing the church, and then you go to, you look at the two persecutions, and then if you look at it, comes up again in chapter 14, probably verse 11 or 12, about there being the patience of the saints and testimonies of Jesus. You see this come up 3 times here in these 3 chapters, and it always, the first 2 comes out of that persecution, and even that third one, it's just saying in these times when there's a decision to be made, it's the perseverance or endurance. I was reading some commentator that really drew out the endurance aspect, which struck a chord with me, because it's not like I don't have to, it's not. It's not patience. It's not just being patient. It's enduring. It's saying that there's going to be struggles, but we endure, and it's the word of our testimony and this faith that we have that's going to carry us through, type of a thing. So it comes up several times, and I think as you look at all 3 times, it really bolsters what that kind of reference means, I
You
think.
get more facets of it as it gets explained multiple times. But ultimately, it's that God wins. At the end of the day, God wins.
So, it came right back up. And then I saw another beast.
That's where we're going to look up next time.
That will be our cliffhanger because
We have
back
we
in
have quite a cliff.
back in April, when we were planning this thing out, Walt and I were like, "Oh yeah, we can finish Revelation in 8 weeks, or whatever it's been." Sadly, I think we've had too much fun, and there's been a nice response, and we've been enjoying this and learning. For me, for both of us,
yeah.
learning out of this thing that. So we've reached the time when we thought, "Oh, we'll be done." So here's what we're looking for.
Well, here's what happened.
Here's what's going to happen. We're going to be on a cliffhanger, and we're going to just take a bit of a break through the holidays. So starting up, mark your calendars, everybody online and whatnot, mark your calendars to join us again January 7.
2026.
We will pick it up right there, and I saw another beast, and we will talk about that beast. And of course, reference back to here. So.
And we'll probably do a bunch of kind of tacking some things together. And we'll be right back here in chapter 13, picking up at verse 11.
So yeah, there are some other things on our calendars that made it that we needed to stop here, and then we all know November and December are just impossible. So that's our
We all are going
plan.
to be at the mall.
So, well, not until New Year's. I mean, not until Christmas Eve.
I don't know.
So anyway, that's what we're going to do. So everybody enjoy your break. Keep reviewing Revelation, but mark your calendars to fire back up. And our intent is to be done the last Wednesday of, I really shouldn't say, but hopefully by March.
We're definitely trying. But part of it is we're working around other things that are scheduled in the building and things that are happening. So we kind of gave ourselves this is what we'll be done by then. Well, here we are.
But anyway, so thank you so much for joining us again, and I'm looking forward to keeping going on this. I have truly enjoyed this
Okay, it's been
with
fun.
all of you out there and those that watch online and talk to us about it. I've really enjoyed this, so Walt, I look forward to picking it back up. Let's close with a word of prayer as we dismiss tonight. Lord, we thank you for your promises. We thank you that you have spoken through your prophets and given us this word that lays out the history of the world, and we can look and see these things happening. And Lord, may, as we look back and see that, may it give us confidence, perseverance, and faith to press forward through the hazy, seemingly uncertain times, knowing that we are on your side and we know that you have us in your hands. So that is our prayer, and we ask these things in the saving name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you for joining
Thank you,
us.
and thank
Good
you
night.
all online for joining us.